Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me. So yesterday, while I was out running errands and doing some shopping at North Park Center in Dallas, I was able to check out the Parade of Playhouses, an event featuring some pretty incredible children's playhouses. Now, the event, in its 20th year, benefits Dallas CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, a nonprofit that trains volunteers to serve as advocates for abused children. Currently, half of the children in protective care do not have an advocate. And so this morning, I want to highlight Dallas CASA so that hopefully you will be inspired to help out, or maybe you know someone who can help out. Joining me in studio right now, Kathleen LaValle, the executive director and president of Dallas CASA, and Bob Borson. Bob is an architect here in North Texas who has been building playhouses for Dallas CASA for the past 6 years. Kathleen, Bob, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Anna. Happy to be here.
Good morning.
Kathleen, what do you want people to know about the work of a court-appointed special advocate?
Well, it's a tremendous volunteer opportunity. The work of a volunteer advocate is to support a child while they're in protective care. And so some of the very important functions you have are to gather information about the child's circumstances, where they've temporarily been placed, when they've been abused or neglected and needed to be removed from their home, and to be able to give the judge who is supervising that case the information they need to make the very, very best decisions for our children. So our judges will decide whether the temporary placement is safe, whether they're protected from further harm, what therapies, what educational assistance the children need so they can begin to heal from trauma. And then ultimately, the judges will make a decision as to whether the child can safely return home, which we hope can happen, or whether we have to look at other options.
Why is there a need for an advocate? Doesn't Child Protective Services or the police department or other agencies handle this?
Well, there are really an entire collection of adults who are involved and who cycle in and out of the child's life while they're in protective care. But what is so distinctive about our volunteer advocates is that they are very focused on that one case, on that child or that group of siblings, and can give the kind of focused attention that really many of the other folks who are involved in the child welfare system don't have the ability to concentrate in the way that our volunteers can.
And do the volunteers interact with the child?
Yes, definitely. I mean, that is a huge part of the role of the volunteer advocate is to get to know the child, to make a real connection, to bond with the child so that they will feel, in the immediate time frame, less alone, less afraid during what is an incredibly frightening time in the life of a child. And so making that connection so that you can accurately report to the court how the child is doing, whether the temporary placement is an appropriate placement, make a recommendation about if the child can't return home, where can they grow up in a loving and caring environment?
Who can become an advocate?
It is a wide open field. So you need to be 21 years old. And we do extensive background checks, of course, as you would expect us to do, because this is work directly with children. But we have just a wonderful assortment of volunteer advocates. Most of them work full time, but you don't need any kind of legal background or experience. We will give you the training you need to be an effective advocate. And besides that initial training, you also are paired with one of our professional staff members who will guide you through the process to make sure that you're the most effective advocate for our children.
And this is open for men and women as well who are 21 and older.
Yes, absolutely. We have actually a greater percentage of women among our pool of advocates, but a growing percentage of men who are participating as well.
Now, Bob, you are part of the Parade of Playhouses, which is currently taking place at North Park Center in Dallas. It's now in its 20th year. How did you first get involved with Dallas CASA? Who first introduced you to this organization?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, the firm I was working with at the time was doing a project with Beverly Levy, who was the then executive director of CASA. And she came over one day and told us about it and said, "Would you like to do it?" And that was simple. I said, sure. It seemed like a fun thing to do. And I have to admit, I didn't know anything about CASA at the time. So it was a real indoctrination, not just to what CASA does, but to the Playhouse process and how we do it and what it benefits and all those kinds of things. And I haven't looked back.
How would you describe the Parade of Playhouses for someone who has never been to North Park Center when the Parade of Playhouses has been going on. And it's going on now through July 26th. People can see these incredible children's playhouses. How would you describe this event to someone who's never been?
Well, it depends on the age of the person I guess I'm talking to. If you're a child, it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life because you'll walk through the mall and they have these playhouses, and they're not particularly large. They're scaled to children. I mean, they're about 8 foot square. And the fun thing that's walk about it for parents is the children will run up to these things and they will start looking to climb on them and imagining what it would be like if this was in their backyard, and their faces light up and they get really excited. And it's fun to watch the parents because then all of a sudden everyone starts pulling out their phones and taking pictures of their kids standing in front of the different playhouses. It's a lot of fun to see.
And for someone who has been to North Park Center, you know how incredible this is for the children who are at the mall, because sometimes shopping can be a little boring for children, not for women and not for certain men, but for the children. So when they see these playhouses and they want to get involved, and Kathleen, that's really what you want, is you want to get the attention of the children so that the parents will buy those raffle tickets, and that money is going to go to Dallas CASA.
And we want obviously to sell the raffle tickets, and we love the excitement that's generated by this event. Besides the fundraising aspect of it, Parade of Playhouses is the number one event we do all year long that raises awareness of the work of Dallas CASA's volunteer advocates. And so it is a fundraiser, but it's also a friend raiser. I mean, it is really important to us that the Dallas community understand that there's a need, that over half the children in protective care go through that very frightening process without a volunteer advocate, and we want to change that. So if we can introduce more people to the opportunity to become a volunteer advocate, that is our highest hope.
Because I think everybody's heard of Child Protective Services. People hear about the court cases, and they've heard about the children advocacy centers, but they may not know that much about Dallas CASA. Do you often get confused with the advocacy centers?
I think there is a potential to get confused. They are very focused on the criminal process itself, whereas we are involved in the civil case, which involves CPS getting approval from the court for an emergency removal, and then that case will remain pending, frequently for a year, sometimes even longer. And during that time, there are going to be many, many decisions made by the court, and so our volunteer advocates are there to make sure the judges have the best information.
My guest once again for this segment of the program, Kathleen LaValle, the Executive Director and President of Dallas CASA, and Bob Borson. Bob is an architect here in North Texas, and he's been building playhouses for Dallas CASA's Parade of Playhouses, which is currently underway at North Park Center in Dallas. It's the 20th annual Parade of Playhouses. How long have you been involved, Bob?
Well, the first playhouse I ever designed was in 2009. So I think I've been responsible for about 19 playhouses since in that time period. And once I found out how the process worked and what the cause benefited, I knew that I personally would always design a playhouse to be submitted. But at a certain point, I thought there should be some way that I could do more. So I actually, I have a website that I run. It's Life of an Architect. And I started a competition where anybody in the world could submit a design for a playhouse, and we would judge them, and we would pick a number of them to get built, and then we would do that locally and donate them to CASA to be raffled off. And the thing that's really neat is that we get people from literally every corner of the world on every continent submitting designs to have these playhouses built so that they can be donated to CASA. It just shows you that everybody can get behind a cause where children are involved.
And this year's Parade of Playhouses features 16 incredible children's playhouses. They're currently on display. You can go check them out at North Park Center, once again, now through July 26th. And the event raises awareness of Dallas CASA and raises money. Where will that money go, Kathleen?
So we're in the middle of a tremendous expansion of our program. And so we have a commitment to serve 100% of the children in Dallas County who are in protective care. We hope to do that as early as 2019. We're serving about 52% of the children today. So that the money that we raise will help us grow, help us have an impact on more children who could greatly benefit from a volunteer advocate.
So the advocates are volunteers, but that money goes towards their training?
We have a professional staff. So you are actually paired with a supervisor who works for Dallas CASA. So you're not going down this path by yourself. So
I know you said I don't need any legal experience.
That's right.
And yet you're going to be working with the whole legal system.
Exactly. And really beyond the legal system, because the greatest work that a volunteer advocate does frequently is actually outside of that courtroom. So it's really those visits with the child, visits with foster parents, going to consult with the teachers. You really are interacting with every adult who is in that child's life while they're in protective care to make sure that nothing's being overlooked.
You say that we don't need legal experience if someone decides to volunteer, but are there any specific qualifications that you're looking for?
Well, compassion. We're looking for individuals who are not only compassionate toward the children, but who have an understanding of some of the struggles that their parents go through and can be supportive of foster parents. Really someone who will be understanding, as a good listener, who doesn't jump to judgments. I think those are some of the qualities, but mostly what you need is persistence, because it's a complicated system, and you want it to be as responsive as that system can be. But that's where you really have the value of the advocate. We think of it sometimes in terms of if you've ever had a relative in a hospital, and you know what a difference it makes if they have an advocate, a family member who's there and can make sure that the care is being given. So if you know that they were supposed to get medicine at noon and no one's come, you can be the one who follows up. And that, I think that's a good analogy for what the volunteer advocate does.
Kind of helps people navigate the system, because when you think about an advocate at the hospital, that's what you want. Someone, I want to focus on my child. You kind of focus on the whole insurance and everything that's going on outside of the room, and I'm going to focus on the child. And that's what Dallas CASA is all about.
That really is, I think, a good image of the kind of support. So you can have a very immediate impact. The child, perhaps feels less alone, but you have the real potential impact for the long term to make a real connection with this child. One of the great risks of being in foster care is that a child's capacity to really form a trusting relationship can break down, can shut off. And that's where our volunteer advocates, I think, have some of their most significant impact. They're able to make that personal connection. And you never know where that's going to carry the child. Maybe they didn't have expectations for themselves, really couldn't dream of a brighter future, and maybe they will because you're expecting things from them, and you're supporting them and encouraging them to dream, and hopefully, this leads to a break in that cycle of abuse.
DallasCasa.org if you want more information about the court-appointed special advocates, DallasCasa.org, and it's all volunteer. People are giving of their time. What is the training process? How long is that training process, Kathleen?
So we offer about 9 or 10 classes a year, and they're typically, a class will last for about 4 weeks, and you'd have 2 evening classes a week, and then one of those weeks you have 3 classes. So we try to get our advocates trained, over the course of about 4 weeks. And then, that's basic training. Your training continues when you're paired with that professional supervisor who's going to support you through the process, because, frankly, every case is different. And so there is quite a bit of learning on the job.
And you said that a lot of the volunteers have full-time jobs, so this is something that they can do on the weekends, after hours. How much time do they have to dedicate if they become a volunteer?
It varies depending on what phase that the case is in, where we ask our volunteers to visit with the child where they're placed at least once a month. And so that's kind of a given, the time that you're spending with the child. You have about 5 or 6 hearings a year, and those will be at specific times, but you'll have, more than a month's notice in advance to have that on your calendar. Most of the other responsibilities and duties of the advocate are really self-scheduled. Many can happen at night, in the evening, on the weekends. Sometimes it's a lot of emails, following up, trying to make sure that certain records got transferred. Our children, they come into protective care, and they don't know how long they're going to be in a particular placement. They sometimes change schools. It can happen even more than once a year. So you really are being that support system to make sure the educational records got transferred from one school to another. Frequently, children are separated from their siblings. It's the CASA volunteer who frequently is the one who makes sure that those siblings have a chance to visit on some regular basis. As I said, much of it is self-scheduled, making appointments and making visits. The court hearings, though, would be during the day.
Bob, as an architect who has donated his time and his talent to Dallas CASA, building playhouses for the Parade of Playhouses, which benefits Dallas CASA, what is the impact that you've seen firsthand as a witness to what Dallas CASA does? What's the impact that you see within the community?
Well, it really has to do with the outreach component of it, because when people are walking through the mall, and this is something you'd mentioned earlier. So when the child and the parent are walking through and you see the child dragging the parent by their hand forward to go look at a particular playhouse, the thing that I'm always amazed by is these raffle tickets, they cost $5, right? And when I tell people that, because they see the playhouse I design or one of the other architects has designed, and they'll look at it and they'll say, how much does that cost for me to get it? And I go, well, you could win that for $5. And they go, how is that possible? I mean, this is an amazing building. I mean, if this was $5, how does that work? And that's when it becomes clear to people that they go, the outreach part of this program is really the most important. It's letting people know that Dallas CASA exists and that they need help from volunteers to actually make their programming work. And you can see that when people are walking around, they start off with seeing playhouses, but very soon they realize, well, what is Dallas CASA and what do they do? And Dallas CASA is very clever, of course, and they have tables scheduled or arranged throughout the mall to where people can ask questions and say, well, can you tell me what it is that you do? And that's where you start to realize what this event's really about.
And finding out that what Dallas CASA is all about is standing up for abused children here in our community. And I have to think, Bob, that they're going to be very impressed with someone like you, this architect, extremely professional, extremely talented, building this amazing. What's your design this year for the Playhouse? Did you have a theme?
Yeah, I normally try to have a theme. And since I was born and raised here in Dallas, I have certain rules to the playhouses that I design. And they need to be a lot of ventilation because it gets hot out there.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, so this year the playhouse I did was called the Outdoor Movie Theater Playhouse. So it's actually got a big swinging door on it so that you can go inside the playhouse and project a movie onto part of the wall. But if you wanted, you could rotate that wall. It actually rotates 360 degrees, but you can rotate it so that you could set up blankets or something in the yard and project onto this wall and have a backyard movie. So that was the concept that I did this year.
So they have to see these amazing designs and think, if somebody like a Bob Borson donates his time and his talent to something like Dallas CASA, this is something that I want to be a part of. And that's your goal, Kathleen.
That absolutely is, because we are a community. The Dallas community is so incredibly supportive and generous. And what we find is that we attract individuals who they read stories in the newspaper and they're just outraged. And so what this particular volunteer opportunity provides is an opportunity to come off the sidelines, to really feel like you're making a difference. You're having an impact on the life of a child. And so we consistently hear back from our volunteer advocates that they receive so much more from this volunteer opportunity than they give, and they give a lot. So it's saying a great deal to say that they feel like they are the privileged ones to be able to stand up and make a difference in the life of a child.
Bob kind of talked about the impact that he sees at the Parade of Playhouses, the benefit for Dallas CASA, how it impacts the community to find out about Dallas CASA. But what is the impact of that volunteer on the life of that child?
Well, as I said, there is that immediate impact. A child has come into protective care. Their world is literally upside down. And so having a constant adult in your life who you can depend upon, who's going to be reliable, it speaks volumes to the child and really causes them to have hope, to feel like they have a connection. And our advocates, they see the impact they're having really on a daily basis. Many of our wonderful volunteer opportunities, we don't really see what our individual work has done. In this role, you really do, and it's we're growing. We've actually swore in 35% more new volunteers last year than we did the year before. We served 21% more children last year than we did the year before. And what this is building toward is we're on track for Dallas to become the largest community in the country to serve 100% of children in protective care through a nonprofit CASA organization. And I think that would be such a proud moment for this community. We're already the largest CASA program in Texas and one of the largest in the country.
Every day in Dallas County, on average, nearly 5 kids enter the foster care system after being removed from their home due to abuse or neglect. And Dallas CASA volunteers are trained and supervised to make recommendations that will help judges decide what is in the best interest of that child. Now, if you want more information, DallasCASA.org is the website. You can find out more information about the Parade of Playhouses. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned, Bob, that you want people to know about the Parade of Playhouses, other than the fact that you have an incredible playhouse on display?
Well, I'll tell you, you're very generous with your words, but you know, I participate in a very small manner, and I look at what the volunteers do and the commitment that they give and the time that they dedicated to it. It's something that makes you feel like you're doing something good, which is obviously makes me feel good to do that. But you realize I need to do more, and I hope people come out and take a look at the playhouses, and they take the time to talk to one of the volunteers out there to find out just what exactly it is that Dallas CASA does. And I can almost guarantee you, if you do, it will change your life.
DallasCASA.org, once again, is the website. And Kathleen, you said that at this point, nearly half of all the children who are under the care of protective services do not have an advocate. 52% do have that Dallas CASA volunteer, but around 48% do not. And your goal is 100%. So the goal here this morning, not just to talk about the Parade of Playhouses and to raise awareness about what Dallas CASA court-appointed special advocates are all about, but also to get more volunteers. What is your pitch for someone out there right now who says, I'm on the fence, I don't know if I have the time, I don't know if I can handle dealing with abuse cases? What's your pitch?
Well, that's a great point, Anna. That one of the points of resistance we sometimes hear is it's just too difficult a subject matter, and that it would just be too emotionally taxing to deal with the issues of abuse and neglect. And what I try to tell people is that we are very much focused on the future of that child. We are not dwelling in the past. We really are looking toward the future, thinking about how we can help this child best heal from the trauma. And that is a very, very uplifting experience. And so it is a role that is difficult because it's a complex system. It is complicated, not always moving as quickly as we'd like it to, but that child will do so much better through that process because you're there, you're standing by their side. And so that really is the pitch, just to know that you're making a difference. The outcome will be different. You will be changed. The child will feel supported. It's just such an important role. And so we ask you, please don't be afraid of the role in terms of what the emotional impact is. You'll be very, very focused on how to make the future of that child better.
Do you have informational meetings so someone can find out more about Dallas CASA and maybe they can decide then, okay, this is a good fit for me, or maybe it's not, but I can help out in other ways?
We absolutely do, and we do want it to be a good fit. And so we have information sessions at least once a week. It's just 45 minutes of your time to come in and listen with absolutely no commitment. We want you to hear about the responsibilities, the role. We typically will have a volunteer advocate as part of that program. And so you'll be able to ask questions. We sometimes get asked questions about, not only the time commitment, and it is more time intensive at the beginning as you're getting to know the child and the circumstances than it is in later months. But you'll have a chance to ask the advocates, what was the hard part? What's been the hardest part of this role for you? And what has absolutely brought you joy and kept you coming back, case after case. And we love for our volunteer advocates to be able to share that with people who may be interested in becoming advocates. So we actually, in addition to everything else our volunteer advocates do, they volunteer to come to Parade of Playhouses. So please, if you're able to get to North Park, look for our volunteers who have a sign on that says, "Ask me about being a volunteer advocate," because I tell you, our volunteer advocates are so passionate and they're so committed, and they would love to tell you why this would be a great opportunity.
And I know that you've been with Dallas CASA for quite a while, so there have been so many children who have been impacted by the work that you do. But is there one story that just really, maybe this year or last year, just really tugged at your heartstrings and made you say, "This is why I do what I do"?
So I've actually been on the board of directors for 12 years. I just became the executive director a year ago. And so there are so many incredible stories over the course of that time. I love the one where we had 7 siblings who were removed from a home. And it was, I think, beyond anyone's dream that we'd be able to find a placement that was willing and able to take care of all 7 children. And that happened this past year. And it's
That's
one of the
amazing. That is truly amazing.
It is amazing because we work so closely with Child Protective Services and feel like we have a very good collaborative relationship with them. And it's a story that they cite frequently because our volunteer advocates, had the time to really do the research, to do the investigation, the home studies, to see, is there a possibility of keeping these 7 incredibly adorable children together, and to be able to support that process, that was quite an accomplishment.
And God bless the family that took those
Yes.
7 kids in. But I mean, that story is like prayers answered. There was a lot of positive energy around that.
Absolutely.
It's the 20th annual Parade of Playhouses, featuring 16 incredible children's playhouses, including one designed by North Texas's own Bob Borson, an architect here in Dallas, and he has been helping out with Dallas CASA since 2009. He has been building playhouses for the Parade of Playhouses. You can check them out now through July 26th at North Park Center in Dallas. And, of course, the event benefits Dallas CASA, court-appointed special advocates. I want to thank my guests, Kathleen LaValle, the executive director and president of Dallas CASA, and Bob Borson, the architect who has designed one very, very special outdoor movie theater playhouse.